Conseil National de la Résistance, the National Council of Resistance, it's actually key. It's key because when it was in power, it was one of the only times in French history where when we had a national union government, for one. And also, it did not only led to defining new institutions and the new France, it was also the starting point of what's really, really important for stability of the country, that is to say the social security system. The French social security system is the masterpiece of the resistance, I would say. So this should also be an inspiration in a country where people try to find something common, something to build in common. That was my first comment. And my question from our Iraqi friends, we are talking about political parties, but what about the independents? What I gather from what happened in 2019 is that they chose an independent to be prime minister, if I'm not mistaken. What could be the decision in 2022? Could there be another independent prime minister? On what grounds would he be selected as an independent? But maybe I will comment on what you finished saying. You were saying, I think the French democracy is as vivid and as guaranteed as, for instance, German democracy. Some people in France would disagree with that. And I think it's because we are living in a crisis. And like in every crisis, the flaws of a system, the flaws of a regime appear even clearer. And the last 5 years and especially the last 2 years have been very critical to that regard. So I'm listening to every one of you, and it's actually very interesting for me as a French person, because we really have a very, very different system in France. And we do things reversely, I would say. And we sort of found in 1958 a system, a constitution that sort of solved in a very weird way the problem of the system of parties, of the ruling of parties. The thing is, and I'm not sure how actionable my comments can be in this discussion, but it can give a perspective. The reason why the Fifth Republic in France was adopted in 1958 was that, first of all, we needed to, the ruling president by then wanted to get rid of the instability due to parliamentarism and to governmental parties. And also it was a time of crisis during the Algeria War. So the whole idea of the Fifth Republic was to build a very strong regime centered around the President of the Republic. And throughout its history until now, it has evolved in this way, in a hyper-presidentialization, hyper-personalization of power, and atomization of parties. And it was done so through a series of reforms and of political practices too, that sort of guaranteed governments to be majority governments. There were very, very few exceptions to that, only 2 or 3. And even in the case where the government is not from the same party as the president, the government is still a majority government. And it was done so through, as I said, a number of reforms and of actions. The most important one was the fact that we reversed the elections between the presidential election and the legislative elections. The legislative elections take place after the presidential elections. So that's why it sounds very foreign to me when you talk about your different political systems, but it's very interesting. The perspective that I want to give is the Fifth Republic was a sort of problem-solving constitution to what we thought was a negative thing, the parliamentary instability during the Third and Fourth Republic. But it also has its flaws. And during a time of crisis, such as this one, the COVID crisis, the institutions and the political practice showed us that the institutions and the constitutions allows for a very strong centralization of power. And I don't know if it's useful to you, if it gives food for thoughts, but that's my take. I'm very happy to answer questions about it, about this perspective. But you mentioned the fact that, and it's true in every country actually, that there's a personalization of power, personalization of parties. You have to combine this with the fact that they are losing power tremendously in France, and you get an idea of what the political landscape looks like. We are in a presidential campaign right now. We have a presidential election in April, and it's not looking so good because you have a completely atomized, fragmented political landscape. Parties don't mean anything anymore, I would say. The only ones that are quite strong are the ones on the right. The left is completely fragmented, irrelevant. And Macron stands out as a very strong candidate because he managed to, yes, create a party in 2017, but the party was not a party, it was just a vehicle for the election. And I think it's more and more working this way, at least in France. So, yeah, does that answer your question?